Hola, hey, hello for everybody joining us on everywhere but Rumble. Hello.
Yes, we just tried to go on Rumble, or I tried to go on Rumble so I could chat with our folks there.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, error. We thought it was just us. No, it is everywhere on Rumble. They were
Yeah.
supposed to be streaming the Biden and Trump debate.
A bunch of people are going to be restreaming a lot of stuff on Rumble. Crowder just said he had like 100,000 people ready to go, already lined up on Rumble. And Rumble goes down 15 minutes before the debate, folks. So nothing to see here, I'm sure.
Nothing to see. So, but we're here, we're live, we're ready to rumble with you on DFM Report. Hope everybody's had a great week.
Yeah.
And spent some good family time or friend time. I know we spent some time with a dear friend of ours in Ottawa, Mr. Pat O'Neill, helping him move. Not how everybody wants to spend their time, but we always enjoy spending time with friends, and it
was still good. Yeah, it was still good. So yeah, that was yesterday. It felt like 3 days, but it's because it's heavy furniture, heavy, really well made Versace furniture. So, and little tiny stairs. So yeah, anyway, so big night tonight. The debate's happening. So basically, we're just expecting to stream this out and then have everybody watch the replay, because I'm not sure how many people are going to get during the giant debate.
Yes, we were hoping to pop in and out of the stream for Biden and Trump as we went through tonight, but Rumble is down, so it does not look like we're going to be able to show you any of the debate while we are on.
Well, so I think we're gonna come at it sideways for their. Michael Chichung saying we're having an error in the intro video, but here we are. So. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to come at it sideways. We're going to just maybe record some and play it later. We want to capture everything before it gets edited out by CNN, who happens to be moderating this thing tonight.
That's why everybody is down. They don't want Rumble having it.
Well, no, and that's one thing. And then the other thing is, I guess they're going to do a 2-minute delay. So they normally have a 7-second delay. They're going to do a 1 to 2 minute delay tonight. So who knows what's going to happen in that 1 to 2 minutes, right?
Either way, at some point in time, Joe is going to try and walk off the stage and Trump is going to be called a racist. So...
Well, whoever is sweating in behind that mask might try to walk off the stage just for effect, but there's absolutely no way they are going to let Joe Biden himself debate this out. There's no way. I don't know how they're going to pull it off, but there's no way the real Joe Biden is going to be debating tonight.
I don't know. Either way, we are live with you. We do have a show planned for you, and we might as well just hop into it.
Hop into it?
Hop into it.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's just start here. Hey, there was a by-election that happened last week.
Yes, and I, like a silly fool, because I am so bad with names, went and did a live and called it St. Peter's and Lisa Chalmers, but it was Lisa Church and St. Paul's.
Robin Peter to pay Paul. Yeah, so conservatives won. Now, they didn't win by a lot, but it's still huge because there's always been a liberal locked riding. Always. Yeah. And it's in the heart of Toronto. And what do you say about Toronto?
In order to win this war that we're in, we have to win Toronto. We have to win Toronto because it has the majority of the population of Ontario. And if we win Toronto, we win Ontario. And if we win Ontario, the rest of Canada is super easy because, Ontario has half the population of Canada right here, or almost half of the population right here. And Toronto has almost half the population of Ontario right here, or the GTA area.
Right. So when Ontario and Quebec vote one way and the rest of the Canada votes the other way, sorry to tell you, Canada, but you just don't matter. The rest of Ottawa and Ontario,
Ottawa
and
Quebec, Ontario.
Yeah, they're just not into you.
No. So go.
Okay, I'll go. So the heart of Ontario is, of course, Toronto. So.
Yeah, so this was a big, big loss. And Toronto is typically a liberal city. So if Torontonians are not voting liberal, our next election, should we have a next election, will be very, very interesting. And not only did the Conservatives take the St. Paul's riding, But after this went down, much debate, much conversation all over Twitter and CNN and CBC and whatnot. Who is backing JT? And hey, JT, are you going to go? Because typically, usually, when stuff like this happens, the leader of the party typically will step down, and a new party will be, or a new leader, sorry, will be chosen for the party.
Well, he says no. He's going to see this candidate through. But we've been saying this for a while. We're gonna play a few things on this, but we've been saying, like, the foreign interference thing and them not answering. This is all scripted, folks. This is all just theater, and the whole idea is to get rid of Trudeau. And we're laying our money down that Carney's going to come in and replace him.
Exactly. So is this Act 2, Scene 1? Or are we a little bit further along in the play?
Why is the news, which was always, Trudeau was their sweetheart forever. They're shifting on him. They're asking questions and they're not backing down. That's new. And then we have, what was it? The foreign interference thing. And they refused to answer that question. And so the news isn't letting that go. And now what's her pickle from What's Its Pickle?
Today, Omar, than there was 24 hours ago. I'm up to 4 MPs, Liberal MPs in Ontario, who have now sent me messages today that they would like to see the Prime Minister step aside as soon as this week.
Yeah, so 4 MPs are secretly calling for his resignation. One MP says he'll throw his hat in the ring, and then another one, Michael something or other from whatever cabinet ministry, he's like, no, Trudeau is the guy to lead us in. So he's still, I don't think he got the memo. He's away the day that they discussed this
he's
act
still
of the
living
play.
in his illusion.
Exactly. So we believe it's going to be Carney, because as much as the Liberals aren't saying anything, the Conservatives are. And we did a TikTok on it. Look at this.
Speaker, the incoming leader of the Liberal Party has just given a speech and given advice to his soon-to-be predecessor. He said that he agrees. This is Mark Carney.
We need to talk about the next leader of the Liberal Party. Mark Carbon Tax Carney.
So can somebody tell me why Poilievre and Scheer would both do predictive programming sales pitches for Mark Carney as the next Liberal leader? Number one, Mark Carney is much more credible than Trudeau and Freeland, so he has a much better chance at beating Poilievre on the next election. So why would they prop that up instead of trying to sweep that under the carpet? It doesn't make any political sense whatsoever. The other thing is, Mark Carney's never held an elected position. So how can he be the leader of the Liberal Party when he's never even held an elected seat? He's only been an appointed government official. Number three, Mark Carney's never announced his intention to lead the country, nor has Trudeau ever said that he's going to step down. So why would Scheer and why would Poilievre be selling the people on the idea of somebody completely credible as the next leader of the Liberal opposition? It does not make any sense whatsoever, except for political theater, and they're all working together to introduce Mark Carney, the elitist globalist, as the next dictator of Canada. Eyes open, think smarter.
So that was a week ago. We stand by that still.
100% we stand by that, and at the end of the day, I don't think either one of us believe we're going to have an election in 2025 anyway. And Mark Carney is the UN's pick to look after our zone. We know, we've shown you guys the map, the 10-zone map of the New World Order. And I'm pretty sure Mark Carney is going to be the guy. And maybe that's why Biden and Trump, someone that the UN, or two people that the UN probably aren't so happy about, why they're letting this election go through, why they're letting someone who is clearly mentally ill, suffering from a health disease, a health illness, why they're allowing him to continue to run. Because at the end of the day, maybe they know something we don't about November.
Oh, sorry. Are you still on Trudeau, or did you just jump over to Biden?
I jumped over to Biden.
Oh, okay. That one.
Well, I don't think we're going to have our Canadian election in 2025. And I don't think that the US election is going to happen either. This is all political theater. And Mark Carney is going to be instated before the November election in the States as the leader of whatever zone number we are. I know we're not zone 1, but I think we're like 2, 3, or 4. I think we're in the top 4 for the zones.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the World Economic Forum has been, putting in their reports that they're sort of erasing national boundaries anyway. They don't see it as national boundaries anyway, and they've been touting in their own reports, in their own words, they've been saying that they're dividing the world into regions anyway. But jury's still out for me on the election. We'll see. It just takes one emergency. It takes one emergency to make that happen. Now, what we do know is that Mark Carney, it's unlikely that he could be the next leader because he hasn't held a seat, but he can, because he doesn't need to hold a seat. They can still, Trudeau can abdicate his seat and name Mark Carney until the next election. So that's not necessary. It's just, if you look in the world of political theater, it's unlikely that they would pick somebody from way outside. Now, that said, Mark Carney, we've done deep dives on this guy, and he's everywhere. He literally is the globalist. He's part of the Bilderberg Trilateral Commission. He's the head of Chatham House. He's part
Committee
of
300.
One Planet Sovereign Wealth Fund out of the Middle East. He does stuff with GFANS, which is a European finance for net zero.
Mm-hmm.
So this man is literally at the forefront of where we're heading with banking, and they are tying banking in with climate change and climate related investments. And I just did a TikTok on his book. He has a book called Values, and he lays out why they do the carbon tax, because without a carbon tax, there's no value on carbon, and they need the value on carbon because all their green buddies who've seen this coming for years and years and years and have been secretly building up for it, all their green energy is useless without carbon or air having some sort of value attached. And when they can say they're reducing carbon, all of a sudden they have value, and now all these investment firms will move off oil and gas. So that's why there's a carbon tax, among many other reasons, but that is the main reason for putting value on carbon. And Mark Carney says, literally in his own words, we are retooling, rewiring, replumbing banking to make this work. So he is at the forefront of global banking, and he's got power in all of the financial institutions around the globe, all of them. He's got his fingers in every single pie.
Yeah, and if you've been watching the Solaria report with Catherine Austin Fitts, they have been drumming this home probably for about 2 years now. Get your money out of the bank, because once they own your money, they own you. Because not only do they own the banking system, but they also own the food production systems, all the food choke points, the processing plants, and the shipping and distribution. They're now buying up all the farmland. And not only that, but they're buying up all of the energy resources. So guys, get your money out of the bank. And we're not saying that'll solve all the problems, but it'll buy you time. And if you can get your money out of the bank and invest in gold and silver, and yes, we know people have investments, and we know people have RSPs, and they're going, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose so much money in investments due to tax. But you know what? If you go to our world, what is it?
If you go to our partners website on TFM report and go to New World Precious Metals, they have answers for you. They have all sorts of solutions. They have
gold-backed RSP, so you can actually cash out your RSPs that you currently have in the markets and money manager funds and what have you, and they will work you through the process to put it into their gold-backed RSP. So you still don't lose it. You'll have gold to cover it off. Now, we know if history repeats itself, our government will eventually say you can't use gold, or people won't allow you to pay in gold, because we're already seeing restaurants and shops saying cashless, right? So we know eventually they'll go that route as well. But again, it buys you time. Or if you're like us, we really truly believe that currency comes in all different shapes, sizes, alcohol, hygiene products, food, seeds. Seeds are going to be huge. Lead, diamonds, all that sort of stuff.
Right. Also, New World Precious Metals can easily send all your assets to another bank account in another country if you choose to move to a different country because it's a warmer climate
Exactly.
or for whatever reason. But they can work with you globally. So there's that, and we keep meaning to have Bryce on the show because this really is important to us, and we would be happy to put you onto New World Precious Metals, even if you don't use our link. We think it's that important.
That's
right?
it. Well, really, we'd love to have Catherine Austin Fitz on the show to come and explain this to you because she's been explaining it forever and a day, and she used to work for the U.S. government, so she knows what she's talking about. But so far, we've been unsuccessful at getting her to the show. But we can definitely say, watch the Solari report. I watch it quite frequently, or I read her magazine. And that's what keeps me on top or on the edge of what is going on. And the BIS and
Solari
IMF
report,
are one of the biggest predators we have to watch out for. It's not JT. It's not the Liberals. It's not even Mark Carney, although he is a scary character. But it is the BIS and the IMF. And Mark Carney loves to do the doings of the BIS and the IMF.
Right. And UN and all that stuff. He literally is, if you want to pinpoint somebody right at the high end of globalism, he's your guy.
He is lathering up in it.
So, and it's not just the conservatives. It's not just Pierre Poilievre, whose allegiance to the World Economic Forum is questionable at best. There's also Andrew Scheer was propping him up, and we know that Andrew Scheer is a young global leader, so he's well more than just affiliated. He's very involved. And then Michelle Rempel-Garner was doing the same thing, not the other day. And we should do a whole show on Michelle Rempel-Garner because she is the master of political theater. But anyway, she's also aligned with the World Economic Forum. So they're working for another entity. They're working against Canada, and they're all propping up Mark Carney as the next leader of the Liberals. And the Liberals haven't even mentioned it. So odd.
So listen, when they tell you they're going to do something, believe them.
Yeah.
Believe them.
So that was fun.
That was fun. Next.
Sure, yeah.
Next.
So that would be this. The U.S. Supreme Court allows government to request removal of misinformation on social media. So there's the rub. They got caught. The federal government in the U.S. got caught colluding with Twitter and Facebook to remove posts and probably other things.
With X,
YouTube and Google and all that stuff. So, of course, the government can't regulate speech in the U.S. Free speech is a protected right in the U.S.
First Amendment right in the Constitution.
That's right. So they got caught. They're caught with their hands in the cookie jar. We actually proudly, if you go back to our show, we reported on it before anyone else.
Yeah.
And it's not
all those Senate hearings about censorship and catching them. And you're right. We
broke the news on that. Yeah. Now, not because we're crackerjack reporters, which we are, but because I happen to be on Twitter a post went up for 30 seconds, and that post had all of that information on it, and I grabbed it, and just when I finished grabbing it all, that post was deleted immediately. It didn't last like 3 minutes, honestly. And so we reported on it very first, and I think the news broke about 2 weeks after that. So they got caught in their hands in the cookie jar. The federal government was dictating what the social media could and couldn't say. Canada, have at it, do whatever you want, because apparently everything's corrupt in Canada. But in the US, that's still a protected right, and they got busted.
Yeah. Well, somebody took the social media giants to court, tried to sue them for violating their First Amendment right. But guess what happened? A judge ruled in favor of the social media giants, saying they have the right to stomp on your free speech rights on their platforms, because one, it's their platforms, and two, unless you can prove that some sort of harm came to you because of that, they can contract with social media giants, can contract with whomever they like and make whatever rules they like, because that is their First Amendment right being protected. So I know it went all over social media going, oh my gosh, the U.S. Supreme Court just ruled down the First Amendment. They're censoring speech. They're allowing government to censor speech. No. That's not what they did. They said social media platforms have the right to censor speech because they own the platform. So they have the right to say what goes on and what doesn't go on. And they have the right to contract with the government if they so choose to.
Right. But the federal government is not allowed to regulate speech. So that's the thing. So what they did is they said, well, the government is colluding with the social media giants. And the judges took a look at that and they said, well, if there's censorship of posts and removing posts and suspending people cause direct harm to those people, then so then they have a case. But they ruled 6-3 against. And so they ruled in favor of the social media giants because the plaintiffs, without any concrete link between their injuries and the defendant's conduct, ask us to conduct a review of the years-long communications between dozens of federal officials across different agencies with different social media platforms about different products or topics. So here's where they disavowed. The court's standing legal doctrine prevents us from exercising such general legal oversight of the other branches of government. So basically they said you did not prove harm, and what the government does is really not under our purview. That is not our business. So the social media guys would have to go directly to sue the government, and then all of a sudden they would have a case. But since they're doing it third party, they're saying the Supreme Court says no, we don't really have any right to oversee them judicially because it's just not in our purview. So that's how they got out of that. And again, it was ruled 6-3 against, and they lost the case.
So what does that mean for you and I, are simple folks?
Well, just one sec. Let's add this last slide here.
Okay.
This is Judge Alito, who's a good guy. And he was the only one to actually write a dissension, and he wrote a long, so the ruling was about 30 pages and his dissension was equally as long as the ruling. And he said, his summary said, for months, high-ranking government officials placed unrelenting pressure on Facebook to suppress Americans' free speech because the court unjustifiably refuses to address this serious threat to the First Amendment. I respectfully dissent. So not everybody's bad in the Supreme Court, but he called it out for like it was, right?
Yes, he did. Now I can't remember what I was going to say.
You said, well, what this means for everybody.
So what this means for us little peons, the bottom of the pyramid, the foundation of the pyramid, what it means is we need to start our own social media links. We have to have our own blockchains. My understanding is Damian Spalding has some blockchain streaming and social media stuff. LGM.news has their own. So those
which is
guys,
blockchain as well,
which is based on blockchain as well. Cloud Hub, same thing. They have their own on blockchain. So
Patreon, Mike Adams built that from scratch.
Yep. So Brighteon, Brighteon. So
not
these
Patreon.
are not Patreon. So these are some of the social media chains you can go to and stream your podcast, your broadcast from. Start having your beautiful, wonderful, questioning, critically thinking voice out on those platforms, and you most likely are not going to get taken down because right now they have their own. They're not Facebook. They're not owned by Instagram. They're not owned by Rumble. They're not owned by any of those folks.
But also Liberty here in Canada, liberty.com, LIBRTI.com is gaining ground, and they're not going to go down that road either. So they'll stay up and give you free speech as long as they possibly can, as long as it's not ridiculously over the line. So Liberty is homegrown, built in Canada as well. So that's another platform.
So there you go. There are other forms.
Yeah.
Or if you are a tech geek, create some more stuff, much like the Instagram and the TikToks of the world. Create your own and market the crap out of it to get people on there and get people off the Facebooks and off the Instagrams. And I know it's super hard because people don't like change, and we're very familiar with those. But we now know the U.S. Supreme Court already ruled that they can kick you off, they can delete you, they can censor your speech all they want, and they will allow the government to contract with these companies in order to do it as well.
Right. So, but here in Canada, different story. They are colluding with the social media platforms. We actually talked to a really well-known podcaster, and we didn't get his permission, so I just won't say who. But he was here in Canada, and his numbers, like ours, were going down, 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 down. And he used to have like thousands of viewers, and it went down to less than 100. And he finally moved to a different country, and then all of a sudden, his viewers started sparking back up to into the thousands. And so, because he was in a different country, it was a different regulation. So Canada is 100% colluding with social media platforms, including Rumble, to what's called visibility filter people out. So they don't stop you, they don't block you, they don't ban you, but they definitely turn down your reach. And Twitter does that through AI on a daily basis, we can confirm. So Canada has been doing that for a while, and they've gotten smart about it, and they do it behind the scenes and nobody really knows. Second you leave Canada, boom, your numbers go back up.
Exactly. So there's liberty.com, there's Clout Hub, there's LGM.news. Those are ones that operate. LGM News, good friend of ours, Wayne Peters. You know him as What's Up Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So check his site out. He has several different podcasters up on his site. Really great.
Last check, Will Dove, Shadow Steven, or Shadow Davis, way back in the game show days.
You are dating yourself.
That's right.
Ooh,
just like all through high school, I was dating myself. So Shadow Davis, good guy. Sean Newman, I believe, is on there, and a man named Paul. Wendy Bell is on there. Yeah. Lots of really great podcasters on our LGM, and I'm excited to. I just chomping at the bit to talk about this. Not TV. When we started, they were the first people who let us live stream outside of our own platforms. And Not TV has great aspirations, and if you don't know, setting up a podcast studio or a broadcast station and live streaming channel, that is very expensive, and they've had such a tough go getting going, but they've got their second wind and they're going again. So not.tv, not.tv is up and running, and they're going to have scheduled programming, so you know who's on when, and you can go into one place. Really excited because they're also really great people. We just love Travis and Kathy over there as well. Okay, so what else?
Next.
Oh yeah, we're just firing through this like.
Hey, do you want to talk about robot skin?
Well, I don't.
But Michael Chuchong does.
Where's that? Where are you?
He's right there.
Where are you, Michael Chuchong? Michael Chuchong.
Pull yourself up.
President Snow, can you hear me? Can you hear me? It's Kat.
Hello.
Hey.
So Michael Chuchong surprised us earlier today with some robot skin. As Chris said.
Yeah, this is getting gross. I'll bring it up for you. So
yeah, on all sites too. It's the video game website, IGN.
Well, yeah, but they got their finger on the tech pulse. So yes. They do good work.
They do. So yeah, scientists are testing how to put living skin on robots' faces with nightmarish results.
Yeah, you can see a couple of pictures there. We've got this. This is the test. This is a 2D face that is that's that moving skin. So this is not just silicone. This is they're trying to tote it as a synthetic living organism that self-repairs when it gets cut.
Like real skin. Are they using like people DNA to do this, Michael?
Yeah, probably from the PCR test. I don't actually know.
I'll fit full circle. There you go. Circle us. PCR life.
No longer PCR test anybody. Well, anybody who did it before, don't do it again. And anybody who didn't, remain at the didn't starting post.
That's what's left of Michael Jackson's clone right there. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty horrific. And then that leads to another article that I saw where they have a reticulating robot that can just move on a dime. So it's running one way and then it just immediately turns around, but all its joints move independently as it's going backwards. As it runs, they just move one by one and right themselves.
Well, it was doing acrobatics and stuff. It looked like Cirque du Soleil acrobatics that it was doing. So you put the people's skin on it, and you're not going to know the difference between robot and people.
Well-
They're getting so darn good at it. And like our show on Monday when we were talking about AI.
Yeah.
So now not only are they perfecting AI voices to be like human and the ability to emote fakely, but now they're going to look and move just like human beings. Folks, we got to, David Icke likes to talk about lizards. Well, we need to start talking about these AI robot skin.
Do we have to talk about these things? It's funny. You should go to Boston Dynamics on Twitter. So they're the guys building these robots, Boston Dynamics, and most of the comments are like, hey, "You guys just need to rewatch Terminator."
Yes.
So yeah, the comments are hilarious.
Skynet already exists. Elon Musk started Skynet.
Well, not only that, we've told people like we
Yeah.
know that BlackRock, Vanguard, those guys own 90% of the commerce in the world. So most of the transactions are run by those companies, and they are run by the most advanced AI on the planet. So technically, AI is already running the planet. So yeah, it's not that.
Dating
not
is getting
feasible.
harder and harder for single people.
Why?
But why? Because not only do you have to know the vaccinated questions, but now you have to ask, are you a robot? Are you an AI?
But-
what is inside you? When you cut, do you bleed?
See, that's easier if you ask me, right? Instead of having to like go to Tinder and work your way into a relationship, you purchase your girlfriend on Amazon, plug her in, and away you go. And away you go.
Isn't that called fleshlights right now?
well
Or blow up dolls?
No, fleshlights don't talk back, and I guess there's advantages to that too. please send all complaints to Jody at tfmreport.com.
All right. I'm just saying, if you're a recluse or afraid of human contact, I guess the AI, skin-covered AI robot is the way to go. However, I still prefer human connection. So being a single person in this world is becoming scarier and scarier. And I am so sorry y'all are going through this.
Well, they're trying to keep us single, right? So people
Right.
just go the easy route and,
That's right.
don't procreate and stay under their thumb.
But true love can happen. You just have to watch Blade Runner. It's true. It's a true thing. All right, so that is that. Thank you for that, Michael Chuchong. Also
problem.
banned from doing stories from here on in. You brought another one for us. You want to go into this one? This one's like the overreaction of the week. So this is the Korean one. You want to fire into that one?
Yeah. So a Korean ISP, which is Internet Service Provider, which would be Bell, Rogers for most of us. So they are accused of installing malware on 600,000 customer PCs to interfere with torrent traffic. And torrent is a way of downloading anything really.
Movies, music.
Yeah, it's the new Napster, if anyone remembers
It's kind of
Napster.
the cyber equivalent of putting a like rocket launcher on your home because you found a mouse, that sort of thing. It's like such an overkill. Like you're just going to destroy all these computers. It's like Napster, right? If people were using Napster and they just send out a virus to nuke them all, it's like a little overkill.
Yeah. Well, they're just doing it on the other side here in Canada, at the ISP side instead.
It's true.
Right. So
I used to get those emails saying, "Oh, you're downloading something you shouldn't," and my mom would come to me and.
Well, I remember I didn't know what torrent was, and I had to ask Chris, well, what is torrent? And then he explained it to me, and I went, oh, I remember that. How many times you go onto Napster or whatever the site was to download a song, and it would give you like 50 different options, and it was like Jenny's computer, David's computer, Ima's computer, ABCDFJ's computer, and I'd be like, oh, well, ABCDEFG has the longest song, so that's the one I want because it's probably the whole song. And I would choose that, and it would start downloading, and then all of a sudden they would disappear, and it would say, okay, now do you want Jenny's or Tommy's? And I'd be like, No, I
Wow.
wanted this one. And then sometimes you ended up with just a little piece of the song or 30 seconds of a song, and I couldn't figure out why. And now I understand that was torrent.
Well, no, torrent is actually a slightly better technology because you're actually downloading from everybody at once. So
Right.
while you're downloading, you're also uploading to other people. So yeah, it's a little more secure in keeping, or not necessarily secure, but consistent in that file being available.
Look how quickly she snitched on Ima and threw her under the bus, though. It's like, holy cow, not good form for a freedom fighter.
Oh, that was back in the 90s. So
Poor Ima's probably gone by now.
exactly.
Yeah. So there's all that. Thank you, Michael Chuchong, for the growth and the absurd, and looking forward to your next stories on Monday. Oh, no Monday.
No Monday. Monday's Canada Day.
That's
so
right.
enjoy the fireworks and celebrate with some red and white flags and
mean-
family and barbecue.
Yes.
You mean drone light shows?
Or drone light shows, laser
yeah, those
shows,
are pretty
Well,
cool.
whatever.
a number of cities have opted to do that now instead.
Drone light shows. I'm
Well,
not gonna
it is.
lie, those are cool. Those are really cool.
And it is more environmentally friendly. And think of the carbon they're saving.
With all the lithium in those drones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Afri-
know, but they're
African
saving
children in the Congo
carbon.
beg to differ.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
But they're saving carbon.
Right.
Net
Hey.
zero.
So something else happened this week, big thing. So it's starting to make you wonder. The Supreme Court thing happened, Julian Assange happened, the debate happened. We should probably be looking in the other direction by about now. These are three big things, but Julian
One
Assange
of the
came out.
hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment. But our number one enemy is ignorance. And I believe that is the number one enemy of everyone, is not understanding what is actually going on in the world. It's only when you start to understand that you can make effective decisions and effective plans. Now, the question is, who is promoting ignorance? Well, those organisations that try to keep things secret, and those organisations which distort true information to make it false, misrepresentative. In this latter category, it is bad media. It really is my opinion that the media in general are so bad, we would have to question whether the world wouldn't be better off without them altogether. There's some very, very fine journalists, and we work with many of them in some fine media organisations, but the vast majority are awful and are so distortive to how the world actually is, that the result is we see wars and we see corrupt governments continuing on.
So
Isn't that ring true today?
yes, and oh, by the way, we're back on Rumble now.
good.
So does anybody on the planet not know who Julian Assange is anymore, or is he famous enough? Just in case you don't know, he started WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks was responsible for sending out some really high-end classified military documents, government documents, and so Julian Assange has spent many, many years in prison with the U.S. trying to extradite him, mostly because of this video, they say. So this is what you're seeing is journalists and civilians being mistaken for terrorists.
Come on, fire. Keep shoot. Keep shoot.
And this was the U.S. Army shooting on civilians. And this is what the U.S. Army did not want people seeing. And Julian Assange brought it out because the media was bad media. And
We'll move, but we got
Oh,
I'm sorry.
US government.
Yeah.
God damn it, Kyle. All right.
And what war did this help propagate?
This is the Iraqi War. So yeah,
Sorry,
so
you're
this happened. They
I'm
tried to
trying to
sweep
find
that
targets
under the
again.
carpet.
Bushmaster 6, this is Bushmaster 2-6.
So they misidentified all those people and gunned them down in the streets, and they sent missiles down their way, killed all those guys. One guy stood up and ran. He was trying to get away. They shot him down in the streets, and they're laughing about another guy crawling in the streets. So of course that's not a video that the U.S. military wants anybody to see. Now here's the thing. That's what they're saying is the cause of Julian Assange getting drummed up on. Basically, I don't know how they did it because he's a foreigner, but treason charges.
True. Well, he was living in the United States, but I believe he was working for the U.S. government at the time, was he not? And came across all this and
Possibly.
decided that the U.S. government and the media were lying to people, and he had had enough and felt that the people needed truth. And he's sort of a journalist, I guess. I guess he's a celebrated journalist now. But, you know, because of that video, he ended up having to go AWOL, seeking refuge in, whose
Well, he
whose
went to
embassy?
Sweden. At some point, he went to Sweden. So around that time, I think he was in Sweden. And the reason I know that is because he got accused of rape. And the way that went down
Twice.
is, and what came out at the time is Sweden has this ridiculous rape law that a woman can give consent, and then after the fact, like days, weeks after the fact, can change her mind and remove consent after the fact. And so that's how they were trying to get him. And it was basically trumped up to extradite him back to the States. And so he fled to the Argentinian embassy in Brazil, or in Britain, and holed up in there for quite a while, and then ended up going to prison after that. So
Yes.
I think Hesham was right.
Ecuadorian, yes.
Yes,
Thank you,
Ecuadorian
Hesham.
embassy. And then and so he lived there for 7 years and had celebrities in and people coming in to visit him. And then the embassy got really angry with that and basically kicked him out. And that's when the British police force picked him up, and he sat in solitary for over 5 years.
Right. So they've just released him just now. But see, here's the thing, that there were other things that were going on that were not as on the radar. Very many people are aware of Pizzagate now. And if case you don't know, Pizzagate was surrounded by pizza. It was a pizza restaurant that was accused of child trafficking, but horrific child trafficking. And a lot of these child trafficking setups were set up by John Podesta, who is now back in the White House, by the way, under the Biden administration, which is gross. So Podesta was setting up parties, and he would set up pizza parties. And there were all these emails between him and the Obamas and the Clintons and people of that ilk. And they were ordering like pizzas. So we would like to order 3 cheese pizzas for 2 hours. So it quickly came out that this was code for children, and they were using these codes. So that all got leaked at the same time. So,
he leaked Hillary Clinton's emails.
Hillary Clinton's emails, and it was discovered that she deleted a whole bunch of them, and she was, hiding evidence and whatnot. And so, he had all of that. And if you do the math, a lot of people who know the Clintons or cross the Clintons tend to get very sad very quick and take their own lives.
Yeah. So Julian Assange was authentic media, and he paid the price for it.
He did.
But he is free. He is home with his family. How long he'll be there, we don't know. He did take a plea agreement, and that plea agreement basically said he served his time and he's done. And he pled guilty on releasing one military video. So
but he has to delete a whole bunch of his WikiLeaks records.
See,
yes.
Something still feels a little funny there, though. Like he got out. He didn't look like he was in solitary confinement. He looked like he was in pretty good shape at this point.
Right.
Is he an AI robot with skin, or is he a clone double with a mask?
Maybe it's just a mask. Maybe it's
maybe
just a
it's a
dude in a
mask.
mask. Who knows? There's been a lot of so if you're on Twitter, there's been a lot of mask videos that have come out where the director of the CIA says we can sit right next to you and you wouldn't know we're wearing a mask. And she was bragging about being able to brief the president, and she was in the same room and he didn't know she was wearing a mask. So all
Until
of
she
these
took it
mask
off and held it
videos,
out.
yeah, they're all coming out right now. The Twitter's been flooded with these mask videos, and like I say, Twitter is run by AI now, so I think it directs narrative. So it's curious that these videos would flood out before as Julian Assange gets out, and also the Biden Trump debate tonight. So like I say, there's no way Biden can debate on his own tonight unless they pump him with like, you know, adrenaline straight to the heart, a la Pulp Fiction style. There's no way that he could debate his way through something.
Maybe this is why Rumble's working now. Maybe he's already walked off the stage.
That's it.
I can loosely hear it going in the background, but I watched some of it at the beginning, and no, I think it was him. He is not in top form. They had the subtitles on immediately, and I could barely understand him.
Wow.
That was in the first 5 minutes of the whole thing.
Or maybe the whole QAnon white hat thing is real, and they are actually bringing us out of a false narrative and bringing us into reality. Maybe that's a possibility too.
Maybe something is definitely going on because there's way too much clickbaity stuff happening.
Yes.
Big giant stuff happening right now, and we have been looking left because everybody's looking right, and we are digging and I can't find what it is unless it's the CBDCs ready to roll out. That being said though, our dear friend Larry sent us some pictures this afternoon. Police, not hydro workers, not utility workers, but police today were seen installing these little boxes, mechanical boxes with lines coming out of them on the poles today. And he's like, what is this? I'm watching the police put them up in Coburg. So we did a little research, and lo and behold, they are these traffic information boxes that can watch 4 lanes of traffic and send all the information back to headquarters, whatever headquarters is. So these are going up in everybody's neighborhood, and the police are now doing it, not just public works, because there's so many of them that are going up like pronto. And actually coming back from Midas today, I saw it entering our subdivision. There is now one right on that light. So folks,
we have a hobby this weekend.
Maybe that's what's going on and why everybody is looking this way. And we're not seeing anything this way.
Right. So now we're going to stop you because we have not said that we've got a special guest on tonight. And this is probably the most exciting thing that's happened this week. A true hero and savior of Canada now has joined us. This is probably the biggest story to come out of Canada. And we'd like to welcome our dear friend, Mr. Chris Weisdorf. Thanks for coming on and being with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Let us give the framework. Let's just read this out while we're all here. Chris Weisdorf, the man you see before, a non-lawyer, was in Superior Court in Ontario.
Yeah, I got to correct you on that. It was Court of Justice, the Ontario Court of Justice. Everything else I think is right, but that's the only thing that's wrong. Yeah.
Well, good thing you're here. Then I'm grabbing this from Twitter, and we know how accurate it is all the time.
I'm going weird Superior Court. I told you,
I already made the slide. I'm too lazy to change it. So you're arguing the second and final part of a Quarantine Act appeal in Brampton on Wednesday, June 26th. Bottom line is you won the appeal, and this is big news. So, Chris, who better to explain it than you?
Massive news.
First of all, I should say I'm not a lawyer. I know in a lot of the coverage they say non-lawyer. That's true. I've never presented myself as a lawyer. I did argue the real law though, so there was a lot of work that went into this. My legal education began only a few years ago, about 6.5 years ago, at the beginning of 2018, when I sued the city of Toronto all the way to the Court of Appeal over 2.5 years. So that was my entry into legal. I did it only because I thought there was an attack on some of our most fundamental, rights, freedoms, and values in this country. Again, it was 2018, before COVID, and I saw that there was, It was a frontal assault on things that have been held close and dear to us and true to us for decades, if not the better part of a couple of centuries. And the city of Toronto said they could violate the charter whenever they want with a formula. And it was March 29th of 2018 when that happened. So I figured, if this kind of sick thinking exists at a very high level in the most populous city in Canada, where are we going to be in a couple of years? And a couple of years later, we're right in the middle of the lockdowns, which should never happen in human history. And they all happened across the planet at the exact same time. So it looks like I undertook a de facto, completely unprofessional or non-professional, I should say, legal career, which I never wanted, never asked for. My dad was a lawyer for nearly 60 years. He was a political appointee. He wanted me to be a lawyer. I never wanted to be. I never wanted to be. I still don't. People ask me now, do you want to be? No, I don't. It's not a good time to be in the legal profession, in my opinion. In this case, I did it with respect to COVID-related stuff because, as I said, I saw something coming. I didn't know what it would be. When the lockdowns hit, like literally, but even before the lockdowns hit, I posted on Facebook that if we go down this road and we lock down Ontario and Canada and the whole world, we're forming a precedent. It's not a judicial precedent. It's not even necessarily a legislative precedent. It is in some ways, but I mean, there's some stuff that happened in the U.S. Over 100 years ago, and they're like, well, we did it for 5 minutes with the Spanish flu. But it never happened outside of a kind of a very narrow scope in the U.S. 100 years ago, over 100 years ago. So when they were going to do it here, I said, we're setting a precedent in terms of, behavior, that it is correct somehow to expect people to stay home and not go to non-essential destinations. Whatever the government meant by that, you're not even allowed to challenge it. So it was dictatorial to begin with. It's not like someone voted for it. They never actually undertook the proper test to declare an emergency either, which is being challenged in the Adam Skelly court case. Yes. Which Jody and I, as directors of the Concerned Constituents of Canada, are involved with in terms of having a public interest of having that actual case heard in its totality. But when this happened, I said that this can't stand, and I was one of the only people. I couldn't believe it, and I thought that 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I thought, does anyone actually believe this? That they'll just after 2 weeks they'll just give up their power? That no problem. Yeah. Oh, it's just 2 weeks. We won't. Maybe we'll do it again, but that's it. So I remember posting on Facebook that they'll never give up power after 2 weeks. And it will be more like 6 months. And I did think at that point it might be 6 months, and then they would reserve the right because they set a precedent, possibly by then a court precedent, but they've set a legislative precedent, a behavioral precedent, that they will pull that out at any time that they wanted as a blunt force tool, a blunt instrument. Like when the whole world looks like a nail. When you have a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. So that's essentially what I was thinking. So when Adam Skelly was the only person who stood up like publicly and he said no, I knew that this was coming. I didn't know who it would be. I was tipped off, very heavily by people in the resistance, and I was told that that the lockdown is going to happen on I think it was the 23rd or 24th of November, and it was because the province said that they would impose the lockdown again, and there was We Are All Essential was created to combat that, to get as many businesses as possible to reopen or to refuse to close in the lockdown that was going to be reimposed again, and there were exactly in Toronto. Okay, it was a Toronto specific lockdown. I believe, it was a Toronto specific lockdown. And Doug Ford said it's fine, and event, and then I believe it was December 26th or 27th, 26th or 27th of 2020 when the lockdown was imposed on the entire province. So it was Toronto at that time. So I was, waiting for something, and I was truly hopeful that there would be a big pushback from this We Are All Essential people who were members of that group, newly created group. I thought there would be some sort of, major resistance to the new lockdown that was being imposed for Toronto only as a litmus test. It was being done to test our compliance, to test their behavior, like training. It's human obedience training. So they want to do it on Toronto first, see how it worked in Toronto, then impose it in the rest of the province. That's what I thought. It's what happened. And what happened was only 3 businesses in Toronto. And there's got to be like this
thousands of businesses in Toronto. And I know there was 100 that said that they were going to stay open, but only the 3 did. But Adam Skelly went publicly and said, I'm staying open. And lo and behold, 3 days of being open, the cavalry, over 200 police officers, and Adam Skelly walked away in handcuffs. And Chris and I, with the help of Sharon and John from Concerned Constituents of Canada, are helping Adam Skelly move through the legal system on behalf of every Ontarian and Canadian fighting the lockdowns that happen. So we do have the link up there that you can donate to. But Chris Weisdorf.
Yeah, I got to tell you. So this is the punchline. Okay. So I told you all this stuff was going on. I was dying to get involved in something. I'd already lost in the Court of Appeal in June. So I was really dying to get involved in something in terms of pushing back legally. Now, remember, I'm not a lawyer, and there was no one out there. This was November of 2020. There wasn't any court challenges to any of this stuff. Adam did it because the courts were closed. They were quite literally closed. So I got involved with Adam's challenge at the beginning of 2021. It was like January 5th, something like that. So when all that stuff wasn't heard, and then I just watched one challenge after another. Finally, they brought them, but one challenge after another just being systematically dismantled by the courts. And I thought, they're not doing any of this stuff right. Even our challenge, the lawyer, senior counsel for the challenge, he didn't follow our instructions, and he was sued for professional negligence, and he settled. I can't discuss the terms of the settlement, but he settled. And the judge in Adam's case said that he didn't do anything right, that he's been a lawyer for 4 decades, that he didn't follow basic civil procedure. So, it's the very definition of negligence. But in terms of looking at all of these challenges and seeing all of them fail, I was extremely upset. I refused to be demoralized. I refused to give up, but I thought there's got to be a way. And so even though I was involved in Adam Skelly's challenge, and even though it was pushed back indefinitely, and it's going to be heard in October of this year, but it was supposed to be heard at the end of June of 2021, which is the highest, coincidentally or not, the highest vaccine uptake in human history was right at the end of June of 2021. It was the wrong time for Adam's case to be heard. But in terms of other legal challenges, they were all failed. And then you've heard, everyone who's paid attention, even in the slightest, has heard the term moot many times. Anytime someone tries to challenge something in civil court, they hear it's moot, meaning that the law doesn't exist anymore. And all very meticulously crafted, so that they bring some sort of temporary emergency law, and then when you try to challenge it in court, they remove the law, and then they say it's moot.
But if you were charged under the law, your charges still stand, and you can still go to jail and be punished for it. But if you try and challenge the law after the fact, they're going, sorry, it's done. We're not going to deal with that anymore.
It happened to Jody. It happened to so many people, where they like to Brian Peckford and all these other people. Sorry, can't challenge the law, doesn't exist anymore. But the Interpretation Act says that any existing proceeding may continue despite the law not existing. So you can still be prosecuted. The prosecution can continue for years after the law doesn't exist. It should be honestly forbidden in our Constitution. They shouldn't be able to. They can't have their cake and eat it too. They can't have a law, remove the law, say it's moot, can't challenge it, while at the same time holding that law enforced for the purposes of enforcement and prosecution.
Yeah, a friend of ours had a story like that.
Yeah.
A friend of ours was just telling, like, his friend was the last person to get charged as for holding weed illegally, and it had already been legalized, and he was still charged and sentenced, and even though the law had already been rescinded. So it's crazy that can still happen.
Yeah.
It should be banned. Like if the government wants to, it should just be banned in general. But a less stringent kind of some kind of whatever ideological interpretation would be if the government wants to prosecute people under that law, the law is not moot.
Exactly.
Right.
But if they want to prosecute it, if they don't want to prosecute, then they should be able to maybe hold it moot. In general, I don't think it. I think any law should be able to be challenged if it impacted a lot of people. If it impacted millions of people, you should be able to challenge the law. But in terms of what I'm here for, sorry, I don't want to.
I'm going. So what people don't know is Chris Weisdorf, non-lawyer, not legally trained. During the lockdowns, during the vaccine mandates, during the Arrive scam, he has been helping people understand the law and interpret the law and find case law to help them self-represent. Because we know right now the lawyers are soaking people, just cashing in on people.
There's some really bad lawyers out there. Yeah.
Exactly. And Chris obviously was part of that with the first Adam Skelly case. He is the driving force behind the Adam Skelly case, still moving forward, still pushing. We've got the dates in October 1st, 2nd, and the 7th to hear the challenge against the province of Ontario and public health. So we've got the Give, Send, Go up there. Please donate because it's going to cost us about $100,000 to fight this. But this man is the driving force behind seeing that all the way through. But not only that, has he been helping people out of his own pockets. He is not taking any money. He has been volunteering thousands of hours, helping people understand what their rights are and understanding case law and how to represent themselves to keep money out of grubby lawyers' pockets, because not all lawyers are good, but our Ian Perry is fantastic that is representing Adam Skelly right now. But this man, Chris Weisdorf, just challenged in the Ontario
Court of Justice. Yeah.
Ontario Court of Justice just challenged an appeal. He represented an appeal, and that is not easy to do. Do you want to tell everybody how you manage? Because everybody thinks when you are appealing a case or challenging a case, you need to have a lawyer represent you. Chris is not a lawyer, and yet he got to represent, and not only represent, but win. This is the first case to set precedents for those of us who challenged the PCR test. People, please listen to what this man has to say. One, how he managed to be able to represent somebody else in their appeal against their Arrive Cam PCR conviction. And then two, what this win, this historic precedent-setting win means going forward. And three, what he is going to do next. Take it away.
So I've long told people, if their stakes are high, you really shouldn't be self-representing. At the same time, you should be directing your counsel about what you want. And if there are helpful cases out there that can guide your counsel to represent you, you should bring them to your counsel's attention. The biggest problem with respect to all of this stuff is it just simply wasn't challenged at all, or wasn't challenged properly. There's the civil stuff where it was considered moot. There's the criminal stuff, which there were some good challenges, but at the end of the day, with respect to some of the stuff out west, with there were all sorts of arrests for protesting and things like that, and those people were convicted. They weren't properly I was going to say defended. I just don't think that the full arguments that could have been used were used. And so a lot of those people were convicted, and then the convictions were upheld in a higher court, by a higher court. So there were a lot of bad things that happened. So I'm talking about Saskatchewan in particular. In Ontario and across Canada, a lot of these Quarantine Act, totally different, it's federal law, not provincial. The Quarantine Act imposed these $6,255 fines plus other fines as well. And it's illegal to issue more than one ticket for the same offense, but they did that. It was just a total like free for all, like totally illegal. They would issue. I know one girl, 23 years old, who said, I'm not playing your game. And she got 3 $6,255 tickets. And that was dismissed because it was a constitutional challenge, a charter challenge, saying, you took more than 18 months to bring the accused to trial. So it was dismissed on those grounds. And a lot were. And now if you're going to be heard, if you have a trial date that's ahead for Quarantine Act or for definitely Quarantine Act, because Quarantine Act, the last tickets were given out on September 30th of 2022. So that means 18 months out is March 30th of 2024. So anything past that is unconstitutional. But you have to bring a proper application, a charter application. And these things do not fail when they're brought properly. But what's so pathetic is that even if you hire a lawyer, well, generally a paralegal, a lot of paralegals, there's some that are absolutely fantastic. But there's some paralegals, they don't even assert your constitutional rights. They don't say.
No, they're playing people out.
Yes. So they say it's more than 18 months out. Hold on. Give me 1 second.
Sure. So Chris.
So we'll set the stage at the same time. So this case, go into the details of what the case was about and really what he went into here.
Yeah. So the couple.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You're back.
Yeah. The bottom line is this: if you have a court date at any point from tomorrow to, it doesn't matter. It's unconstitutional. If it's Quarantine Act, it's more than 18 months since you were charged. It's unconstitutional. You have to bring a proper charter application to get the charge stayed, or the charges stayed. So that's. That's been going on since the beginning of 2021 when they mandated testing to cross the border. So when this stuff happened, I didn't intend to ever become involved with any of the Quarantine Act stuff. The reason being that it's all low court. It's court of justice. It's not superior court. It's not federal court. It's nothing like that. It's low court. And so I didn't like the idea of becoming involved in something like that, because if you lose before Justice of the Peace, who doesn't even required to be, they're not required to be a member of the bar. They really are not a member of the bar.
Anybody can apply to be a justice of the peace and actually get that job. You don't have to have legal training to have that job.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So justice of the peace is supposed to have specialized knowledge with respect to some criminal stuff, some provincial offenses stuff, some charter stuff, things like that. But once you go outside of that, then the justice of the peace is not going to know it. And the justice of the peace should step aside and say, you know what, the judge should hear this case. That's what should happen. But they don't. They just dismiss it and they say go to appeal. When people go to appeal, they don't know what they're doing. So this is where I come in this circumstance. So I have nothing to do with any of this. And then I hear about someone who I know. It's a friend of a friend, and so I hear about argued this Quarantine Act case and lost. She got convicted. And she cited the Canadian Bill of Rights in Section 14 of the Quarantine Act. The Canadian Bill of Rights, because you don't need to provide all that. I remember I just told you just now about a charter challenge. You have to serve the attorneys generals. You have to bring the challenge in a particular form. You have to file it in the court with proof of service, and you have to do it at least 15 days ahead of the actual time when you're going to argue it. There's a lot of stuff you have to do procedurally correct. If you don't do it, you can't get a remedy. So I can understand why people don't want to argue the charter, and other people have been completely demoralized and saying the charter is useless and it's a garbage piece of legislation. It's in fact the opposite. It is the most powerful piece of legislation on the planet.
If done right.
Yes, but people don't do it right, and then even when they do it right during COVID, it wasn't applied by the courts, and because it's highly politicized. So
Correct.
the charter is usually very good. In COVID related stuff, it isn't. So I knew that in any of the Quarantine Act stuff, you couldn't argue the charter because there is a precedent called Spencer, the Spencer v. Canada case. And this is 3 years ago, June of 2021, said that quarantine camps are completely constitutional, according to the charter. So you couldn't argue the charter. It was a dead letter with respect to, arguing someone's rights with respect to the Quarantine Act. So this defendant went into court, not a lawyer. She did as good a job as she could have. I thought she did a very decent job, but I heard about this later, a couple of weeks later. She argued the Canadian Bill of Rights in Section 14 of the Quarantine Act. The Canadian Bill of Rights, she argued that because you don't need to provide notice. And the Justice of the Peace didn't even allow her to argue it. And then the second thing is, well, she said, but your honor, your worship, whatever, I plead the Section 14 of the Quarantine Act says I don't have to test. And the whole thing here, I was charged for refusing to test. I don't think I should have to test. The Quarantine Act says in Section 14, I don't have to test. And on top of that, it says the test may not go into the traveler's body, may not enter the traveler's body. What about that? And the Justice of the Peace rendered a decision and didn't even mention Section 14 of the Quarantine Act. So, sorry, I got to just adjust my chair here. So, I got involved in this. I did it very much behind the scenes. I didn't make my name known at all. I just wrote everything for her, and I said, just submit this stuff. So I wrote the notice of appeal, and I did all this other stuff. And here's the issue about appeals: you have to follow procedure. You have to follow procedure, and most people they have no idea, and they know this. If they decide to just bully you and railroad you and convict you and go screw you, go to appeal, you're not going to be to undertake that appeal. I guarantee it. So that's where you need counsel. The problem with counsel is the paralegals are not familiar with this type of law because it's federal law, and they just
typically don't do it. Yeah.
And then the lawyers, if you hire a lawyer, they could charge you up to $5,000. Well, the fine is $5,000. So maybe you might end up paying the lawyer $5,000, but you're not going to likely get the results that you want. And you might feel satisfied you gave a lawyer who might even be a really good friend of yours $5,000 rather than the government. But it doesn't solve the problem. The law remains unchallenged. And remember about the whole thing about it being moot?
Yes.
Guess what? When you're criminally charged,
it's not moot.
You can challenge the law. It's not moot because it's right on top of your head. You're being prosecuted right now. It's a live controversy according to the courts.
Right.
So you're allowed to challenge it. But in the Court of Justice for Ontario, they don't have the power to do anything but vary or acquit or convict. That's all they can do. They can't declare legislation invalid. In other provinces, they can. They can't do it in Ontario. So what you have to do here is you have to make a bunch of legal arguments. You have to argue that the Canadian Bill of Rights does apply. You have to argue the Section 14 of the Quarantine Act does apply. It makes testing illegal. You have to argue interpretation. You have to argue that there's a conflict of law. And you have to argue that there's in the actual garbage order, which was being challenged, to prevent to overturn the conviction and enter an acquittal. You have to argue that there's something called a derogation clause, or it's something equivalent. It derogates from the actual Quarantine Act it was made under. Even though that's natural, that's the common law, that's the courts, they recognize that. It says it outright. It says it for greater certainty. If there's nothing in this order that affects the powers or obligations of the Quarantine Act. Well, guess what Section 14 is? It's both a power and an obligation. It's an obligation of the government to stay in line. You can't use something that goes into the traveler's body. It's an obligation on the traveler to alert the border guards that, well, it's a quarantine officer, screening officer that you don't want to test. And she did that. She cited it there. She said she doesn't want to test. She got the ticket. She cited it again in court. She was convicted. I said, come on, it says it's forbidden by Parliament, by Parliament. So I went in with written submissions. These written submissions were constructed months and months, and maybe January, I don't remember. But the hard copies were submitted to the court in the prosecution on March 1st. This stuff was heard on May 10th. This was supposed to be the appeal date, but the judge said, come back. There's a lot of stuff in this. You've submitted 25 cases here. There's a lot of stuff in here. Let me give this a fair shake. Really good. This is what a judge should do. I'm not familiar with all this. Let me look at all the stuff you've cited. Let me read all your arguments, because I just read it right now. I got to really properly consider this. And also the prosecution, you haven't made any written submissions, Mr. Prosecutor. Why don't you make some written submissions? And they said, no, we won't be making written submissions. He said, suit yourself. He said
they were so arrogant, thinking they had her that they didn't even bother doing their work.
They didn't. This is truly astounding. So I said, Your Honor, I intend to submit at least a reply. He said, Mr. Weisdorf, feel free, make another submission, fulsome submission if you like. And then, we'll reconvene on, we don't know the date, talk to the trial coordinator. So we ended up setting June 26th. So June 26th was yesterday. It was yesterday morning. And I went into court, and it was on the 21st, on Friday night, where I submitted my reply. And so it was 8 pages originally and another 8 pages on reply. And I kind of waited 5 days before, just in case maybe the prosecution would change their minds and submit something in writing. They didn't. So submitted it, and on the day of, I said, Your Honor, did you get my reply? Because it addressed everything you brought up at the last hearing. You said, what reply? I'm like, oh, of course you don't have it. No, I don't have it. So the prosecution, this other prosecutor who was there on yesterday, really, really professional, very fair, and just said, Your Honor, I have it. I'll just forward it to you right now. He did. The judge took exactly 5 minutes to read over those 8 pages, and he said, it doesn't change anything. I'm just going to render my decision. So I thought we were screwed. I thought he doesn't care. And even though, little did I know, he did give this full consideration. And he said at the end of the day, he said, I need not weigh in on the Canadian Bill of Rights question, because that was really, it was what do you call it? Tangential. I brought it up because I said, listen, you can't shut up someone when they're arguing the Bill of Rights. That hits her to her right to make full answer defense. You're imposing a higher standard on her than anyone else. You're not accommodating her as a self-represented litigant and things like that. He didn't address that. He said he wouldn't, and that's fine. He said this comes down to Section 14 of the Quarantine Act. So this is very, very, very narrow. It comes down to a very narrow, single question of pure law. And so and this is brilliant. And this is what I wanted. I was hoping that it would come down to the single question of pure law, because the Bill of Rights, it applies to federal legislation, not to provincial legislation. No matter how many times you've been told otherwise, it applies to federal legislation. And the Supreme Court's recognized this a bunch of times. Divisional Court has recognized it in Ontario. Superior Court has recognized it in Ontario. Court of Justice has recognized it in Ontario. The Federal Court has recognized it. The Federal Court of Appeal has recognized it. The Court of Appeal of Ontario and the other. So don't argue that the Bill of Rights applies to provincial law. It's not going to work. And I've done a ton of work on this, a ton, more than anyone, because I argued this in 2018, people. So I've chewed the fat. I've read the case law. I've done all the work. It doesn't apply, no matter how much you want it to. It doesn't apply. Federal legislation does not apply to the legislature's enactments. So I was waiting to hear the decision, and he said, Bill of Rights not weighing in. But guess what? Section 14 of the Quarantine Act, and he was reading it. He read it out. He said it may not enter. Maybe I should very quickly read this out just to be sure you have it. Quarantine Act. So I'm gonna read this to you, and this has been posted online, but I'm gonna read this to you because the judge read this out as well. And I don't have the written. There's no decision yet in terms of like on the Canadian.
It's not uncannily yet, but it will be.
Not uncannily yet. It will be, but it's not yet. So it says screening technology, section 14, subsection 1. Any qualified person authorized by the minister may determine whether a traveler has a communicable disease or symptoms of one, use any screening technology authorized by the Minister of Health, that does not involve entry into the traveler's body of any instrument or other foreign body. And then subsection 2, it says refusal to be screened. If a traveler refuses to be screened with the screening technology and the person using it is not a screening officer or quarantine officer, the person shall immediately inform a screening officer or quarantine officer of the refusal. So she did that. It says that's an obligation. You have to. It says shall. Yeah. You must do it. She did. But it says here, so she, number one, it's right there. It's not legal because she refused it. But number two, and really this is the real question, is it says authorized by the minister does not involve entry into the traveler's body of any instrument or other foreign body. Well, that's what this is. The molecular test, even though it's not defined as entering the traveler's body in the order, it's right in there. And so it's not. It doesn't say that is something that enters the body. It doesn't say anything. It just says you're subject to a molecular test. Sure, okay, but it has to be legal. It has to comport with the enabling statute. That's the Quarantine Act, the Act, something that has gone through 3 readings in one House of Parliament and committee, and 3 readings in another House of Parliament and committee.
And had received royal assent. Right.
Yes, received royal assent. Instead of this stupid order, which is made to the snap of fingers, right? It's just a stroke of a pen. It's just
correct.
There's no debate. So yeah, I this is what the judge read out, and then he went into the Oxford Dictionary. He was reading out what he copied, and he would instrument, other body, that sort of stuff, and he said, guess what? If it goes into the nostril or anywhere, that's entering into the human body, and traveler's body, human body. And on the day of when I argued this on May 10th, the prosecutor said, "Oh, Your Honor, that really means it's like through the vein. It means like a needle." And I said that's not what the legislation says. That's not what Parliament says. And he goes, "No, that's what it means." And then I said, "Yeah, this is what this is the term I use." I said, "Your Honor, Parliament didn't mean that. Parliament didn't say that. They were absolutely clear and unequivocal. Penetration is penetration."
Yeah,
that's what I did. Mic drop, right? So I hope that I hope the judge remembered that, because on the when the decision was rendered yesterday, which I didn't think the decision would be rendered yesterday. I intended to go over my reply, ask the judge if he had any questions, see if the prosecution wanted to argue anything, because there were no written submissions, and they didn't. And so, yeah, what ended up happening was he rendered his decision. He said Section 14 of Quarantine Act overrules anything that was required in the order, and the basis of the conviction cannot stand. The appellant is the conviction of the appellant is overturned and an acquittal is entered. That's it, and that's the win, and that's huge. Even though it's low court, but it is a judge. It is an appeal. Yeah, it's low court. It doesn't apply outside of Ontario. It doesn't apply even outside of the Court of Justice. But that said, good luck appealing that, because, as I said, the prosecution didn't submit any written anything.
So they've got nothing to appeal. They can't appeal it.
And look, I'd be thrilled with an appeal. It would be great. It would be music to my ears to hear an appeal here. Because if it went to appeal, I could get it. It would be either Superior Court or even the Court of Appeal, which would hear it. So, and this is a question of pure law. And guess what? They can't win on this, because this is textbook. It's absolutely textbook. It's one question of law. It's a question of pure law. It is textbook. So it's very, very narrow. So I would be very happy to have the prosecution appeal it, but they're not going to. The question is next, what happens? And that is a question of legal strategy. I will be talking to counsel about that. We have to get the decision first that, you know, where everyone can read it. And then we can see about getting it into a higher court. We'll see what our options are there, because this is not something I could do. I can't just go to federal court, even if I wanted to, even if I knew what to do, because I want to make sure that the court can't duck it. So this has got to be done very seriously, and it's got to be. And this is, if it's done properly, it'll apply across Canada, and all of the convictions can be struck, and all the money can be given back. If this happens, this has never happened in Canadian history, but this is what can happen because no one actually argued this stuff in the court of justice. No one went in and said,
who tried to argue at their first appearance, like when I went, that's what I was arguing. And I was arguing hearsay and Quarantine Act Section 14, they withdrew the charges.
Yeah.
So I won. Essentially, I won. I didn't have to pay the fines and I have no conviction on me. But at the end of the day, I didn't set any precedents because they withdrew the charges. Yes. But this actually set precedent. So anybody else who has the ticket, you can go the route of a charter challenge because it has been longer than 18 months, or you can just simply say Quarantine Act Section 14. And what was the name of the case?
It's called Fernando, but it has to be listed. I wouldn't just.
It's
dangerous.
So it's listed.
I would still say it's dangerous. It's dangerous going into court and using this. I would say. I wouldn't self-represent it on this. I know there are some people who really want to.
But you'll probably withdraw your charges anyway. But there is precedent set in lower court saying PCR test contravenes Section 14 of the Federal Quarantine Act, folks.
So will this have any effect? If any, will it have a positive effect on the Skelly case? Or
no.
There's no connection. Yeah.
But look, the first gentleman to actually get precedent set and win in the appeals courts is Mr. Chris Weisdorf, the same guy who has put thousands and thousands of hours in the Adam Skelly case. And if he can win at the appeal stage with the judge and set the first guy to set precedents, a non-legal person at that, to set precedents, something that none of the lawyers have yet to do. This man did it. And this man is the one who is helping the Adam Skelly case go forward. We do have lawyer Ian Perry that is representing Adam Skelly, but he's got the force of Chris Weisdorf behind him. He's got the force of Sharon and John and myself, the CC Can team, that's Concerned Constituents of Canada team behind them. You want to know more about the Adam Skelly case, please go to cccan.org. And if you'd like to donate, because we need to raise money for this case, because lawyers cost money and paperwork costs money. And when you go to court, there's all kinds of fees.
Justice costs money.
Justice costs money.
Yeah, it sure does.
Unfortunately,
if the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, George Soros, they're spending $1 trillion, and there's over $1 trillion that was taken with respect to the vaccines and hundreds of billions of dollars for testing and everything else. Yes, guess what? You have to spend some money of your own. And maybe in many cases, it costs well over $1 million to challenge anything. And these things don't even get to court. This one will get to court, but it's taken a long time. And if it costs whatever, $500,000, it would have been way cheaper before, but the courts weren't open. The counsel was very hard to come by. It was very difficult to find people who would listen to you. So in this case that I argued in this appeal, to be clear, a paralegal really, for the most part, couldn't argue it because they would need to have the knowledge of the case law that I had. I've read through hundreds of cases. I'd say I read between 400 and 500 cases, which is no one does. No one, at least in the right mind, does that who's outside of the law. But I did.
If someone had paid a lawyer for the kind of defense that you gave this person, the defendant, Melanie, they probably would have paid about $30,000 in legal fees, and Chris did it for free. So there are.
She gave me $100 in gas money. Okay. She gave me $100. She's like, I know, I'm giving $100 in gas money because I had to go to Brampton from Oshawa
twice.
to argue it.
Right.
Twice.
3 times. I went 3 times because
Yeah.
I went originally March 1st, May 10th, and then I went on yesterday. So even then it doesn't even cover the gas that I burned. But what happened here was the ticket is $5,000. At least the fine that she was appealing was $5,000 because they removed the victim surcharge because there's no victim. Anyway, so it's $5,000, and then if she hired a lawyer and the lawyer did all the work that I did and knew what to argue, and it would have cost at least $30,000 because just in terms of the hours and the research they'd have to do, and the arguments they have to put together, and go back and forth and go to court and do all this stuff, it would have cost a substantial amount of money. Now it's upside down. If it's $5,000, and there's no possible way that a lawyer would even come on the case other than do something for maybe $5,000. They wouldn't challenge the law.
They would make her plead out.
Yeah. So it wouldn't. So guess what? The law remains intact. The only way to defeat the law is for someone to do this either as a lawyer who has the knowledge to undertake this, to do it for free, and that's probably not going to happen. And to do it in the best possible way, and then or someone like me, and someone like me doesn't. There's no. Unfortunately, there's 41 plus million people in Canada, and I'm the only one who's done this work, and that should scare people. Yeah,
exactly. But this is hope. There are good people out there willing to do the work, willing to put in the time for the betterment of our society. Chris Weisdorf is one of those men. He set precedent today or yesterday in the lower courts, in the appellate courts. He is showing people how to do this. He is helping people out of the kindness, literally kindness of his heart.
I'm fighting for my country.
Exactly. So hope exists. Don't give up. Don't have the defeatist moment. We are winning in the courts. We are going to win with the Adam Skelly case and with people like Chris Weisdorf in the background. And he is doing a crap ton of work for Ian Perry and for Adam Skelly to keep those costs down. CC Can is running fundraising events. GiveSendGo.com/BBQ_rebellion is where you can donate to, or you can donate right on the cccan.org website. You can e-transfer donations, but Adam Skelly has the power of Chris Weisdorf behind him. You've already seen what Chris Weisdorf is doing that no other lawyers, no other paralegals, no other legal assistants have done to date. He's setting precedents. He knows his stuff. We're going to win with Adam Skelly. So please celebrate this win. Yeah. Take this hope to bed with you and smile. Because for the first time, Canadians can breathe. We're starting to dig our way out, and we've got good people, kind people that understand what this world needs in order to beat the global predators that are breathing down our backs. So donate if you can to cccan.org. Know that Chris Weisdorf has your back. He is setting precedents. He is my friend, and he had me in tears today. I was so proud of him, so proud of him. I feel so honored to know you. Thank you for being on the side of Canadians everywhere. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for giving of your time, thousands of hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes. And thank you for everyone for continuing to defy. There are a lot of people who say, I don't care what happens, I will never give in. And I've said, I do not consent. I will not comply. I will not obey. I will never give in. And if just let's say 10% of the population truly adopted that as their mantra and said, no way, never, and showed up, like actually showed up at the legislature, Parliament, and all that. Don't need to block any roads. Don't need any of that to do any of that. That's 10% of the population is about 4 million people. There's nothing that the police or military or anyone can do about 4 million people on the streets. There's nothing they can do.
Exactly.
So know that, and also know that the Great Reset involves saying you will own nothing and be happy, but it also means you will not vote and be happy. It'll be like European Parliament, or how Ursula von der Leyen and other war criminals are getting in without any type of electoral process. They're just being reappointed. That's the China's the model. Like President Xi, dear leader for life in China, right? You don't get to vote, right? You don't, unless you're a party member. You don't count. So that's what they want. China's the model. So you will not own anything and be happy. You will not vote and be happy, and you will not go to court and be happy. Very important that you are fully demoralized into believing that the courts will never give you justice. And this proves that justice is possible. But people might go, well, I didn't get justice. Here's why. This is a heavily politicized process. Everything with COVID is. It's not about the rule of law. It's not about the science. It's not about the truth. It is about jackbooted power. It is about making you do things. So the only way to defeat that is to call out the great lie in court, as Adam's case is doing and has did over 3 years ago. That's why it's so incredibly important, because you can't turn back time. You have to have somehow gotten the evidence from 3+ years ago, which Adam's case has. No one else has that on the face of the earth. No one else has that.
Yes,
Adam's case is the only case left on the planet which has evidence from 3+ years ago, which can prove that they knew or ought to have known that this stuff is tyrannical trash. But with respect to the courts, I said the great lie is one thing. The second thing is the law as it stands. Section 14 of the Quarantine Act has been there since 2005. Did anyone bother arguing it? It's right there. It's right in front of our faces. It's right there. It's right there.
Exactly.
Who pointed it out first? Chris Sky, because he was the first person who got a Quarantine Act anything at the end of, it was September 26th of 2020. I was there at Dundas Square at the protest. I was there when he got the ticket. I saw it. And then he brought it up in November. He said, I looked at the Quarantine Act. I don't really understand a lot about the law, but I read through it. And guess what? It says this stuff is illegal.
Exactly.
He described it. So then I did a deep dive into Quarantine Act. And then it was the beginning of 2021. They said testing. You have to test. And I said, says in the Quarantine Act, you don't have to. And it says in the order, molecular tests. I'm like, this is flagrantly illegal. Is anyone call it out? Beginning of 2021, guess when it was called out? A bunch of people went into lower court and said, Your Honor, Your Worship, Your Justice of Peace, Section 14, and they said, get out of here, go to appeal.
Withdrawn, dismissed.
So I didn't know about any of these, but I knew about this one because friend of a friend, right? I know this person. Yep. So then I argued an appeal, and in order to do that, you have to argue everything. You have to argue the interpretation. You have to argue there's a conflict of law. You have to argue there's a derogation clause in the order. You have to do it. And it's a very high bar. Why? As I said, it's politicized. If you don't execute perfectly at a very high bar, at a high level, you're going to lose. No judge is going to stick their neck out for you. You're a pissant. You're nothing. That's how we're regarded. But a judge will back you if the judge feels very strongly about the law that you've argued, that they're completely shielded, that they could say I did my job, and no matter what happens behind the scenes, I did my job. And it's now if you want to appeal it. But I did my job, and it is solid, it is intact, and that's what I did, and no one else did it. And this is the problem: if you don't argue any of this stuff, and you get upset, you get demoralized, you get a lot of people. I've talked to Chuck Black and a lot of other people, reporters, and they're like, I've been interviewing people since 2020, and you know what? A lot of people have just given up. They're not out there anymore. They're not coming out. They're just waiting for the next shoe to drop. They're just waiting for the next terror tactic to be employed on the Canadian people and the rest of the world.
And we're not stopping, and you're not stopping, and we're being loud, and that's the key. Be loud, be strong, be forceful, but be knowledgeable. And we got this.
Right.
We got this.
Exactly.
Don't give up. Don't
Thank
give
you
up.
for coming on. Thank you for
Thank you.
explaining that. Great win today. So
Yesterday.
yeah, yesterday.
Mwah.
Hopefully you're going to
It's-
celebrate.
It goes on. It goes on.
Right.
You can't let this wear off. It's critical. It will
Right.
change the law in Canada, but not automatically. Certainly not immediately. There's a lot
Right.
more fighting that needs to be done. But realize that if you argue the law properly, real law, and most people can't do that. If you argue the law properly and you do it at a level that you know you're being held to a much higher, even unfair and unjust standard, realize that you have to do it. You have to go that extra mile or 2 miles or 3 miles. You have to, because that's the only way that a judge will stick their neck out for you. It's the only way.
Right.
So
And we're
realize
winning.
that the courts are fair, but you have to realize that the courts have had immense political pressure put on them, immense. And they don't want to admit that they're wrong, and they certainly don't want to go against the government or anything else that's going on. That's why in this case it's questions of pure law, which are the court's domain. If I brought in evidence about, that there were reasonable alternatives to emergency measures, no, that won't work, because you got to bring experts. You have to bring the experts in the original court. You can't bring it on appeal. There's a lot of people who don't understand this. Okay,
Right.
so if you don't do it right, you're going to get eliminated. It's just like stepping into a ring with an amateur boxer, but someone who's been boxing for a few years, not at the professional field, and you step in the ring with him, you're going to get knocked out. It's that simple.
Exactly. And
So
we're not ready to admit defeat, nor are we willing to be knocked out. So we're doing things right. We are informing, we are educating, we are knowledgeable, and we are saying no, and we are standing up strong always. Happy long Canada Day weekend. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the weekend, Chris, at our house.
I'll see you.
And I hope everyone else is spending time with their family and friends, or at Shave Leck and Ledgerwood. Blow out all those fireworks. Who cares? Let's do some carbon damage, because we got trees that'll eat that up anyway.
That's right.
Happy weekend. We will not see you Monday, because Monday is a stat holiday, and we will need to rest up after the long weekend of camping at our property. So we will see you next Thursday.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris, for gracing us with your presence and your intellect and your stamina to continue fighting.
We're looking
Thank
forward
you.
to celebrating the win with you this weekend, and we'll see you this weekend. For everyone else, have a great happy long holiday Dominion Day,
Canada Day
weekend. Yes,
You
that's
got
right.
it.
Okay, good
Fly
night,
the
everybody.
flag. Fly the flag. Proud,
Fly that flag.
loud and proud.
That's right. All right. Good night, everybody. We'll
night.
see you next Thursday. Bye-bye.